Hey again, guys. So, back to Hugo, because I know you're just dying in anticipation to see what happens next in our fabulous story. Welcome to my stepson's room. It's just a nice little area that's quiet, so Quinn's being rocked by her dad, so I have a minute to read to you guys. But anyway, back to our story. We finished off where we found out why Hugo was so attached to his notebook and why it meant so much to him, and how it's important for him to get it back. And we also found out that his father had died and that he had been taken in by his uncle Claude. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move on. So chapter 6 is called Ashes. The next day, at the crack of dawn, the old man was opening his toy booth when Hugo approached. "I thought I might see you today," said the old man as he turned toward Hugo. He reached into his pocket and removed a tied-up handkerchief and held it out. Hugo's eyes widened hopefully, but as soon as he took the handkerchief, he understood what he had been given. His breath caught in his throat, and tears began to form in his eyes as he undid the knot. Here we have a picture, guys. So, it's not looking promising for that notebook, huh? Hugo touched the ashes and then let them fall into the floor with the handkerchief. He staggered backward. All of his plans, all of his dreams disappeared in that scattered pile of ash. Hugo charged at the old man, but the old man was quick and caught his arm. "What is your attachment to this notebook?" he demanded as he shook Hugo. "Why won't you tell me?" Hugo was sobbing. As he tried to release himself from the old man, he noticed something strange. The old man seemed to have tears in his eyes too. Why in the world would he be crying? "Go away," the old man whispered, letting go of Hugo. "Please just go away. It's over." Hugo wiped his eyes with his dirty, ashen hands, leaving long black smudges across his face. He turned around and ran off as fast as he could. Hugo was exhausted, but it was time to check the clocks again. For a moment he considered giving himself up. He'd never get the message from the automaton now, so he might as well turn himself in to the station inspector and be sent to the orphanage. At least there he wouldn't have to steal food and worry about the clocks breaking down. But the thought of losing the mechanical man was too much to bear. He had grown to love it. He felt responsible for it. Even if it didn't work, at least at the train station, he had it nearby. Hugo set to work on the clocks, but no matter how he tried to distract himself, he kept seeing the handkerchief filled with ashes. He was angry with the old man, and he would never forgive the girl for lying to him. At the end of the day, Hugo put down his bucket of tools and sat next to the clock as he had been checking. Next to the clock he had been checking. He placed the railroad watch in his bucket, pulled his knees up to his chin, and held his head in his hands. The steady rhythm of the clock lulled Hugo to sleep, but he dreamed of fire and woke up with a start. Frustrated and sad and finished with the clocks, he finally returned to his room and tried to sleep. But his mind wouldn't stop spinning, and so he reached for a scrap of paper and a pencil from one of his boxes near his bed. He sat down on the floor and drew pictures of clocks and gears, imaginary machines and magicians on stage. He drew the automaton over and over and over again. He kept drawing until his mind calmed down. Then he slipped the drawings underneath his bed onto the big pile of other drawings he had done and climbed fully dressed into bed. Alright, a little view of Hugo's room. I'm always peeking over to make sure you guys can see, so don't mind me. But, alright, let's see if we have another. No, more words. Morning came and the clocks were waiting, as always. After Hugo had finished his rounds, he washed his face and hands in his basin. He was thirsty and longed for a hot cup of coffee. It was impossible to steal coffee since someone had to pour it, so he searched through his jars and came up with a few coins. Hugo bought himself the coffee and sat for a moment at one of the empty cafe tables. He preferred to pay for what he could with his coins that he found each week, and he tried not to steal anything he thought people needed. He took clothes from the lost and found and scavenged the garbage for day-old bread. Sometimes he allowed himself to steal fresh bottles of milk or pastries when they were left outside the cafe early in the morning, as his uncle had shown him. The toys, of course, had been an obvious exception to his rule. The coffee was hot, and as Hugo let it cool, he looked around the cavernous station at all the people rushing by with 1,000 different places to go. When he saw them from above, he always thought the travelers looked like cogs in an intricate, swirling machine. But up close, amid the bustle and the stampede, everything just seemed noisy and disconnected. When Hugo picked up his coffee again, he noticed that a folded piece of paper had appeared on the table. He looked around, but there was no one near enough to have left it. Slowly, he unfolded the paper, and it read, "Meet me at the bookseller's on the other side of the train station." And that was all. But then Hugo turned the paper over. There was one more sentence. "Your notebook wasn't burned." Intrigue. That's chapter 6. So I guess, that was a bit of a cliffhanger. I wonder who knows or why they know that Hugo's book wasn't burned. So I am going to go ahead and read chapter 7, which is titled Secrets. Hugo had never been inside the bookstore before, but of course he knew exactly where it was. He knew every inch of the train station. Opposite the cafe, not far from the main waiting room, there were 2 wooden tables covered in books flanking a door with that read, "R. Labisse, bookseller, new and used." A little bell jangled as Hugo stepped inside the store. He was rubbing the buttons on his jacket, and one came off in his hand. He slipped it into his pocket, where he continued to rub it. His heart was pounding. The place smelled of old paper, dust, and cinnamon. It reminded him of school, and a brief flash of his old life pleasantly filled his memory. His best friends, Antoine and Louise, both had black hair and liked to pretend they were brothers. Hugo hadn't thought about them in a very long time. The taller of the 2 boys, Antoine, used to call Hugo Tick-Tock because he always had clockworks in his pockets. Hugo wondered about them. Did they still pretend they were brothers? Did they miss him? Hugo also remembered that sometimes at night Father would read to him from amazing adventure stories by Jules Verne and a collection of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales, which were Hugo's favorites. He missed being read to. A clerk sat at the desk between 2 tall piles of encyclopedias. Hugo looked around. At first he didn't see anyone else in the shop, but then, like a mermaid rising from an ocean of paper, the girl emerged across the room. She closed the book she had been reading and motioned for Hugo to come over. And there's that girl again. Papa Georges still has your notebook. How do I know you're not lying? You lied before. I didn't lie. He's tricking you. Why are you telling me this? Why do you want to help me? The girl thought for a moment. I want to see what's in your notebook. You can't. That's a secret, said Hugo. Good. I like secrets. Hugo thought she was a very strange girl. She called to the clerk sitting in the back of the store. Monsieur Labisse, I'm taking the book on photography. I'll bring it back soon. Yes, fine, he said distractedly as she left the bookshop without looking at Hugo. Part of Hugo did not believe the girl. Maybe she was playing a trick on him. But since he had nothing to lose, he marched over to the toy booth and waited until the old man was finished with his customers. The cogs and gears in his head were spinning out of control. What are you doing here? Asked the old man. Hugo took a deep breath. I don't believe you burned my notebook. You don't? The old man seemed surprised. He thought about it for a few moments and said, Well, I don't really care. Maybe you're right. Maybe those were not the ashes of your notebook. But you won't ever find one, will you? Hugo inched closer to the booth. The old man calmly straightened the toys on the counter and said to the boy, You should not have returned here, Hugo Cabret. Now go away. The old man calmly straightened Hugo did, but later, alone in his room, and while he scurried through the walls fixing the clocks, Hugo thought about the automaton. He convinced himself he had to keep trying. He returned to the toy booth and the next day, and the day after that. At night, new drawings accumulated beneath his bed. Finally, on the 3rd day, the old man came to him with a broomstick. Hugo flinched, thinking that the old man was going to hit him, but instead he raised the handle toward Hugo and said, Be useful. Hugo took the broom and began to sweep the floor around the booth. The old man watched carefully. When Hugo finished sweeping, he handed the broom back to the old man. Now give me my notebook. The old man coughed and reached into his pocket. He pulled out some change. Go buy me a croissant and a coffee, unless you're going to steal my coins too. Hugo happily grabbed the change and returned quickly with 2 croissants and 2 coffees. They ate and drank in silence. When they finished, the old man got up from the bench where they were sitting, went behind the counter, and found the remains of the little blue wind-up mouse that Hugo had stepped on when he was caught stealing from the booth. The old man laid the crushed pieces on the counter and said, "Fix it." Hugo just stared at the old man. "I said fix it," he repeated. "I need my tools," Hugo said. The old man took out a small canister of tiny screwdrivers, pliers, files, and brass hammers. "Use these." Hugo hesitated for a moment, but then he set to work. Picture time. So, he's going after the mouse that he stepped on. I think I have lots of pictures here, so I'm just going to hold this up. And Hugo is now being tasked with fixing what he broke from the toy makers. Looks like he knows what he's doing. Oh. So it looks like it works. The mouse skittered noisily across the counter. "So I was right about you," said the old man. "You've got some talent. Now, will you tell me why you came to me? Will you tell me about the drawings in your notebook?" "Give it to me first," said the boy. The old man exhaled. "If I didn't burn your notebook, there's only one way I would ever consider giving it back to you. Children like you are not worth the rags you wear, but most children like you would have disappeared completely after being caught, and most children like you aren't so good with mechanical things. Maybe you will prove that there is more to you than just being a thief. Perhaps you can earn back your notebook. But remember, you are gambling with your time, because you might work for me for months and months only to find out that you were wrong about the notebook. There's a chance it's already gone. That's the risk you'll have to take. You'll come to the booth every day. I will decide how long you must work for each of the items you stole, and it will be up to me to decide when you have earned back your notebook, if it still exists. Do you understand?" "I already have a job," Hugo said. The old man laughed. "Thief! A thief is not a job. It's not a title, boy." "I have another job, but I'll come here when I can." "You begin tomorrow," said the old man, and Hugo ran off down the empty hallway, careful not to click his shoe heels on the stone floor. This wasn't the perfect plan, but for Hugo, at least it was a start. Dun dun dun. All right, that's the end of chapter 7. So now we know there is a possibility that it was not burnt, the notebook was not burnt, and that he could possibly earn it back. And I'm kind of interested in this girl that keeps popping up because we have not learned a lot about her, but she is proving to be a pretty good character, mysterious. So hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about the girl. And that's it for today, guys. So I'll see you next week. If I can stop my camera, I don't know.